Welcome to the Brain Aware podcast, where we explore the science of success. Your hosts, Dr. Britt Andriata and co-host Justin Reinert, are thrilled to have Bob Gerard, who leads Learning Ingenuity at Accenture. In this episode, we'll dive into Bob's remarkable journey in corporate learning and development, exploring how he's helping transform the way people learn and grow in organizations. Get ready for an insightful conversation about innovation, change management, and the future of learning.
Bob, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today. You and I have been partners in crime over the years together, and it's really just fun to catch up with you this way. We want our listeners to learn more about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your amazing career journey you've had.
Oh, wow. So my name is Bob Gerard. My current role is I lead Learning Ingenuity for Accenture. And the way I unpack that is we are research and development for how Accenture people can learn better. I'm part of the HR organization, so I'm really focused on our own people, our own consultants, and how we build their skills. If you know anything about Accenture, we basically provide any professional service for any company, anything that we can do to help your business be better. And so I've got a lot of colleagues who do that same type of work for our clients, but I'm focused really mainly internally. So that's the end point of my career journey. The 2-minute version of the story is I was a computer science major in college and decided I wanted to do that for a career. I got to college and I realized that I wasn't the best coder in the world, but I was getting A's in all the English classes that I was taking as electives. So what could I do with this information? And I realized that if I got a minor in technical writing, that I could basically write like computer documentation and help people learn how to use software, which I was interested in doing. I was the first person, Brit, in the history of the University of Illinois who ever had that idea. Worked with a professor to create the minor program for computer science majors just for me.
Oh my God.
And then I got recruited by Anderson Consulting right out the door, which, eventually became Accenture. And so that's kind of the beginning of my career journey there. I realized very quickly the team that wrote documentation also was the team that did the stand-up training classes. And the team that created the stand-up training classes had to pilot them and actually teach. And that's where I realized that that's really where my heart was singing. And, like many, many washed up theater kids, I found a career in stand-up training. And then over the years, kind of did every role that you can think of until I wound up where I am right now.
That's awesome. As the mom of another theater kid, hire theater kids. They are the most resilient, crafty bunch you can ever find.
Absolutely. Creative and organized. It's amazing. So
that's hilarious. And I love the theater kid aspect because I literally was just talking about it today with someone about a conversation I had years ago when I was in L&D at the bank. And there was a colleague and I were talking about our theater days. And we're like, I feel like this is the job that failed theater people do is like, we can still have a stage. We can still have a stage and get up in front of people.
100%. And add business value by performing, right? It's great. Yeah. But yeah, it is where washed up theater kids wind up.
Yes. And instead of being a failure, you're making a lot more money than actual professional theater people do. So
I don't want to rub the salt in the wounds, right? But yeah, at least consistently, right? Consistently making money.
So, Bob, as you think back on your career, I'm sure you've seen a lot of change. If you wouldn't mind sharing, one that's memorable, either one that went smoothly or maybe one that was challenging.
So I can tell you one, and it happened 27 years ago. And I can tell you in a second why I remember it with that precision. But it was the very first time that we at Accenture created what we called a virtual classroom course. So up until then, all of the learning experiences that we had were in a physical classroom. They were in a physical environment. And sometimes they were your traditional lecture activity type stuff. Sometimes they were a little bit more creative and a little bit more experiential. We used to run these programs that we would call goal-based scenarios. And essentially we'd bring in a team on Monday morning at 9 a.m. and say, hey, your job is to, at the end of the week, pitch a solution for clients on how you're going to improve their business. By the way, the clients are right down the hall over here. You can schedule time with them to talk with them. And we bring in real clients to play those roles, our actual clients to play the roles. And they would work through the whole week, talk with them, interview them. What are your needs? How can we solve it? And then at the end of the week, we make the pitch. So we would do all that, but it was all live. And it was 27 years ago. The reason why I remember that is because when we piloted it, we did it in Tokyo in Australia. And I was over there when my wife sent me an email and said that we were expecting our oldest son. And he's 27 now. So that's how I remember that. But that was such a shift in we had to figure out from scratch, how do we take what essentially was a classroom experience and do it in an environment. The environment we were using at the time was Lotus Notes. This is really dating that. We had no video. We had no audio, actually, unless we got everybody together on a conference call, which we would do about once a day. And so figuring out what did that mean to learn alone, but also learn together. And not realizing at the time that we were launching a trajectory that would ultimately get to where we are right now, where the vast majority of learning experiences that we have, if it's a synchronous, everybody doing a learning experience at the same time in a group, is in a virtual classroom. Now we tend to use Microsoft Teams, we use video, we use audio, a lot of different things and all the bells and whistles and stuff like that. But it really was leading the charge. So it took a long time to figure out all of those different tricks and tips and how do you coach people and how do you prepare the faculty and all those type of things. But we managed to pull it off. That was a huge change.
I'm curious, what from that experience, what did you learn and how did you carry that learning forward?
Yeah, what I learned is that my understanding of what learning meant really kind of was in a little box. And when I took the time to step outside that little box and say, okay, what is it that we're really doing here? What is it that we are trying to achieve? What are our goals? That you could expand that box and do things in a different way. So when we were willing to let go of the idea that a classroom meant that you had to be physically co-located and realize what is it that you get from interacting with each other in a learning experience and working on a little project together and all of that, what is it to be gained? We could find a different way of doing it.
And what about right now? What are some of the big changes you're currently navigating or launching soon? And I know Accenture is a big name in kind of AI stuff. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'd love to have you share a little bit about that too. So what's going on in your current world?
Yeah, well, I would not earn my credibility if I wasn't, as a learning ingenuity guy, if I wasn't talking about AI. We think about it all of the time. We are working on how we are able to best use AI and generative AI to improve learning at Accenture. Now, the way Accenture's business is focused, we have a relatively new business that we call Accenture LearnVantage. And so I'll put it this way. I don't have the luxury of only worrying about Accenture people anymore. I'm always thinking about anybody because anything that we come up with, we might be using with our clients in LearnVantage and a bunch of great people that we've pulled together to create this team. But when we started thinking about artificial intelligence and learning, this is actually kind of a funny story, Britt and Justin, is I get my innovation team together every year physically. And we do it pretty much every fall as we're kicking off our new fiscal year to figure out what we're going to do over the next year. So a couple of years ago, at the end of this retreat, I said, this is like 2023, I think. I forget the exact year, but we've been talking a lot at Accenture about 2025 initiatives, right? Nice round year. So we had Strategy 25 and Learning 2025. Let's take a few minutes and think about learning in 2035. Like, what's learning going to look like in the far future? What's a vision that we could think of? And so we just brainstormed ideas from science fiction stories and just crazy old ideas, anything that came to mind. We're all good design thinkers, so we have our ample supply of Post-it notes, and we made all the Post-it notes. We put it up on the wall. I took all these Post-it notes, clustered them, did all the things, but then I turned it into like a 13-page sci-fi story about a day in the life of an Accenture person in 2035 and how they go about learning. And I won't waste the rest of this podcast time by reading you the whole story, but like a key beat of it is the idea of this consultant wakes up in the morning, and when she wakes up, her AI assistant, who she's just put on her glasses, her augmented reality glasses, so she actually sees this woman come in her door, and this woman, the AI agent, says, I am so glad that you're up. Your client called in the middle of the night. They've had a cybersecurity breach. They need to talk to you this afternoon. I have cleared your entire schedule for the morning. And by the way, you are not as up to speed on the latest in cybersecurity as you think you are. So I've assembled for you a video that's going to give you a quick briefing, get you up to speed. Then we're going to role play the conversation that you're going to have with the client. Based on that, I'm going to connect you with some of the real people who can help you with that. We're going to do the call. I'll be there. I'll take notes. We'll debrief afterwards. We'll figure out your plan of action. And so we came up with this idea and we're, wow, this is really cool. And we like it. And then my colleague, Ben, who is the most technically focused of our group, this is good, but I don't see us being able to get to here by 2035. I think it's more like 2045 or 20. This is going to need advances in artificial intelligence and in augmented reality to get to this vision. And we're, yeah, okay, but we like the story. It's a good vision to shoot for. Well, it was literally the next month that OpenAI released ChatGPT. And, we started playing with these things and we're, oh, wait, maybe this isn't Learning 2035. Maybe it's Learning 2026. Apple released their vision for the Apple Vision Pro. Wow, we might even get the augmented reality stuff. Well, probably not the Apple route, but it's really interesting what's going on in that space as well. More interested, of course, in the AI space. So we have been kind of taking that vision as this is where it's going. And I'm not the only person, my team isn't the only group that came up with a vision like this. I've read a lot of other similar stories from people like Sal Khan or Ethan Malik, really, really great brains who are coming up with the same ideas. So I felt like we're headed down the right path. So how do you actually make that happen? Well, we are thinking about what does AI look like in the hands of the learners, which is like the story I was just telling about, right? It's the learner who has that experience. But also, what does AI look like in the hands of the learning team, the learning organization? Because we will still have the need to design learning experiences. We'll still have the need, I believe, to run learning experiences, to have the virtual classroom experiences and things like that I've been talking about. So what does it look like for AI to be in the hands of those people to make it more efficient, more effective? One of the things that we realized early on, and we did this in conjunction with our colleagues at Tailspin, who are now part of Cornerstone, and Kyle Jackson and his team, we realized that with the advent of Gen AI, that the good, fast, or cheap pick two triangle that everybody talks about, that kind of goes away because now you can kind of get all three.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can do something good and fast and cheap. So then how does that triangle expand? Like, what does that look like? Does that mean that any one learning developer can be infinitely more prolific? Like they can generate really good stuff much, much quicker? Is it improving the quality even more than it really is? Is it working alongside that AI agent to say, let's do a mash of designed by a human plus AI team to create a learning experience, plus stuff that the agent is generating on the fly to put together a bespoke learning journey for somebody? These are all the types of things that we're playing with right now, and it's exciting.
So, Bob, given your focus over your career in learning development, thinking kind of a little more near term, although the vision of 2036 is more near term at this point, I'm curious how change plays into the programs and initiatives that you drive within your organization. Like, how do you layer that in?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And if you'll allow me to indulge, you haven't allowed me to indulge on this podcast already, but if you indulge me looking at change from kind of two different perspectives. So one is how I see learning changing, not just the AI stuff, but just kind of like this business of corporate learning evolving in what I think is a really positive direction that is related to learning people, I think, kind of finally embracing what corporate learning is all about. So I will paint with a very broad brush and say that a lot of us who have been involved in this field for a long time have been thinking that our job, our business is creating learning experiences for people. Our job is to build learning. And kind of in the same way that old wives' tale or urban legend about the CEO of Black & Decker saying, we don't sell drills, we sell holes in walls. When you think about, coming back to the earlier thing, like break out of the box of how you've thought of learning. What is it that we are really here for? What's our objective? It's embracing the idea that for corporate learning, ultimately, we are here to help people change their behaviors at work in a way that is going to bring better business results. So the fundamental going in proposition of 95% of learning experiences that we design is that we need people to do something in a slightly different way than they're doing it right now, or do something that they've never done before, because our business strategy says this is what we have to do to hit our sales targets or meet our goals or meet our efficiency targets. Our job as learning professionals is not just to create the training classes, it's to do whatever it takes to get people to do that. So really, it is about change. We are in the change business. Our job is behavior change. So Britt, you know from the conversations that we've had over time and from the work that you do is, sure, now we are looking as a learning organization within Accenture at the technical side, the content that we're training and all that kind of stuff. But we're much more aware of how the brain actually works with learning. And we are thinking of, my team several years ago developed what we call the set of durable learning principles. It's 8 traits of learning experiences that make them last and make them sticky. And it's, Britt, we've talked about this before. It's right up your alley. It's like all of your stuff in a slightly different wording, right? Things like the importance of good nutrition and good sleep and all of that to making sure that learning actually happens, because what we're going for is the results. The other change that we are really working on is making sure that we are measuring those very well. So before we engage in any learning experience from here on out, right? Like a typical scenario might be you've got a stakeholder who is a business leader and they will call up and, the ideal for us as learning professionals is if they call up and they say, hey, my people need to better do XYZ. Can you help me come up with a plan to help them do XYZ better? That's magic if we can hear that, because then we can do what we do. Typically, that's not what happens. Typically, they call us up and they say, I need a 2-day training course, right? It needs to be live. It needs to be in person. It needs to have 16 hours of PowerPoint presentations. I need you to build this for me. And what we are doing now is saying, okay, before we take on any work like that, let's have that conversation. Okay, what is it that you're really trying to do? What are those behavior changes you're trying to make? What are the business metrics that you are trying to move? What are those needles you're trying to move? How are we going to measure them to know that we're successful? So that's the going in position. We get those listed out. Then once those are listed out, we've been working on a new framework for measurement we call the SKY framework. I mean, it's definitely building on the shoulders of giants, right? But what we're saying with Sky is you don't necessarily have to build things on top of each other. You can look at a program and say, okay, we know we're going to measure the business results. Now, the next question we want to say is, how effective was the learning experience on shifting those needles, right? If we're going in with the position, we know the needles that we're trying to shift and we're going to measure those and we're going to be able to say, yeah, we accomplished the goal of people doing this behavior and it leading to these business results, then was it because of the learning program that you did, or was it because there was incentives, there were performance incentives, or maybe the leader cast a better vision, or, there's all sorts of different factors that can lead to that actually taking place. So now we're saying you can pick from those 4 things. How much would satisfaction be able to tell us, learner satisfaction at the end of the course? How much would that be able to tell us how effective the learning experience was in shifting that dial? If all we do is measure satisfaction, then we could go in and we could say, hey, your sales went up 25%. We have about a 50% confidence rate that the learning program had an effect because they were super satisfied with the learning experiences that led to those type of things. But if we also do a knowledge test at the end, if we also follow up a little bit later and figure out how are they applying these things, if we do deep dives into what is the impact that each of these metrics is having on the overall business, now we can start to say, well, we're 80%, we're 90%, we're 99% sure of the impact that the learning experience had. Just the trade-off is to do all of that work is expensive and time consuming. So for some programs that we do, flagship programs, really big things, super high profile, super important things, we would do that whole 9 yards for measurement. With things that are a little bit smaller impact, we might be happy just with, let's just get a satisfaction score. So this is the type of stuff that we're working on right now. And hopefully I didn't bore your listeners to death with the intricacies of learning programs.
No, we love that. I think I geek out on this stuff, and we're really getting into looking at habits, right? And the brain structure, the basal ganglia, and how we take repeated behaviors and turn them into automatic pilot behaviors. And you're absolutely right. There's no training we roll out in organizations where we're not trying to ultimately move a business metric, either increasing or decreasing something, right? And your way of getting that information up front so that you can deliver the training that's actually going to move the right needle and attack the right behavior is the key to that. I'm wondering if you can share an example of, just a very concrete example of a client came in and they had this need and you helped move the needle in this way, or how did you dig in on making sure that the right habit was established? I'd love just to continue to geek out on this conversation.
Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, with NDAs and even friend-DAs with you guys, can't share too much detail about current stuff, but I do have a good story from several years ago. So we realized that we were hiring a lot of people, and they were mostly people in India and the Philippines, to be specific. We were hiring a bunch of people into roles at Accenture who just would not show up to work on the first day. They would ghost us. They would never show up, and we would never hear from them again. And so I was working with our onboarding team, and we're like, what do we do to solve this? So we did a little bit of research, and we realized that the reason why people were ghosting us was because they would get a job at Accenture, and it could be a very strategic, technology-oriented role or a business process role, a high-stakes consulting role. But the reputation that we had in those areas was that we were essentially call centers. And so you get somebody who was engineer coming out of college, graduating cum laude. We are hiring them in to use that expertise and be one of our strategy consultants. And they would go home and they would talk to their parents and they would say, hey, I'm working for Accenture. And their parents would be like, you're not going to work for a call center company. You have to go to this company and be a big high stakes engineer, because they just didn't know what was going on. So we realized what the business problem that we had was, do people understand what Accenture is and what we really do and the whole breadth of services that we do before they walk in the door on that first day? And so that was the metric that we decided to measure, was that. And we measured that renege rate, right? How many people were actually showing up on that first day? And we did some math beforehand, and we realized if we could shift that needle just 1%, that the amount of money that we would save would way more than pay for anything that we could build to do that. So this was a fun story. Is we contracted with a video game company based in Chicago, Justin, called Jellyvision. They also have a business consulting arm. We partnered with them to create an interactive conversation where, again, this is way before AI. This is 20 plus years ago, where it felt like you were talking to a person who was like, hey, let me tell you about the work that Accenture does. And like, we do this and we do this. And isn't this cool? And isn't this great? And the vision of it was, it would be so cool and engaging that we would send it to people before they would start. And they would then say to their parents or their grandparents or all the people who were pressuring them, don't go to work for Accenture. Well, sit down and do this and you're going to understand it. And we did this, we released it. Within 1 month, we were able to realize the renege rate had completely dropped. We made back the investment that we made on that within 1 month. The amount of people who had a grasp on what we did as a company coming in the door got to the numbers that we wanted. And so then we were able to say, yeah, this was a successful learning experience. It wasn't just because it was cool, just because people said that they were satisfied about it. We actually got the results.
Yeah, and that's true ROI, right? That you can prove that you move the needle and that your solution costs less than the benefits achieved, right? And
that's right.
How culturally sensitive to realize that there was this barrier going on, particularly a regional barrier, where what you really needed to do was extend learning to the families and give the new hire the tools to have that conversation with their families. I love that.
We were just thinking of the learning experience and we weren't thinking about what's the business impact we were trying to have, we never would have come up with that.
Right. And that's why I think learning designers of all ilks, we really need to have on a consultant's hat and ask these questions, and B, really get into the behavior change, because ultimately we got to drive a behavior change that's tied to a business metric. And those are the questions that get you to design exactly the right solution and get the results that people want. So kudos to you. And I know that that's what drives such excellence at Accenture and all the things that you guys do.
Well, thanks. That's super great. And as we think about what's going to happen in the future, again, with this AI buddy that I was talking about earlier, is now we can start thinking about super, ultra, hyper personalized learning experiences. You've got a agent that might know even better than you do what you need and when, and is able to serve it up to you in a way that you will enjoy. I am not going to anger my Learning Geeks partner, Dana Koch, by saying your learning style, because we know learning styles are a myth, but learning preferences are real. In a way that you like, a way that's engaging to you, and a way that fits in with your schedule. Like, all of these things are coming, and it's just a super exciting time to be in the learning space.
Yeah, not to stir anything up, I'd love to get into the style versus preference debate, because I have some strong opinions there as well. But we're not going to go there. Looking forward, what's something that you're excited about in the coming months, either personally or professionally?
Personally or professionally? If you talk about personally, then I could go on forever. I have a sideline career. Like, my goal is that eventually when I retire, officially hang up my boxing gloves and retire, that I'm going to spend at least a few years doing more podcasting, which I do now. So we've got our Learning Geeks podcast that I just talked about. And so we'll keep doing that even after I've officially hung up the gloves. But I am also working on becoming a semi-professional Star Wars fan. So I mentioned Star Wars earlier. I'm very passionate about it. I do have a Star Wars podcast now that I do as well. And my goal is that I can keep doing that until I get old and gray. So that's personally, with a side of professionally. It's just maybe not as professional as you think professional means.
I think if you have a Star Wars podcast, you are not just a semi-professional Star Wars fan. You're a legit, full-on Star Wars fan.
It's all about getting money for it, Justin, is the deal, right? I'm fully invested. It's just, do I make money from it? Right now, I don't. But someday I will. So
okay, everyone go out and listen to the podcast so that he can monetize it and call himself a professional Star Wars fan.
Well, I'll tell you what I did there, because it does kind of relate to what we were talking about. Is I thought, I don't want to just make another Star Wars podcast, because there's a million of them. What is a need out there, right? A need that can be fulfilled. And what I realized is, I really, really like listening to podcasts, but I tend to do it when I'm cleaning my kitchen or when I'm taking a shower, right? I put the iPhone volume on high so I can listen to it while I'm in the shower. Doing those things only takes about 15 minutes, right? But your typical Star Wars podcast will last for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And so then I'm getting them in bits and pieces and I'm not finishing episodes and all that kind of stuff. I was like, we need a shorter Star Wars podcast. So my podcast is called Short for a Stormtrooper, and it is a 15-minute Star Wars podcast. So we get it done in 15 minutes. You're in, you're out, you get your taste of Star Wars, clean your kitchen, you take your shower, you do whatever. And that's the specific business need that I'm trying to address is Star Wars fans without a lot of time.
I love that. And most of our podcasts are going to come in at 20, 30 minutes. So Justin, we may have to give people permission to like take a shower with us and then go clean their kitchen so they can hear the whole thing.
There you go. You're still good with our Learning Geeks podcast. We typically go about half an hour as well, by the way. And our first episode, I think we did like 2 hours. And it was because like all these other podcasts go on and on and on and on. And the feedback we got back was like, you guys, great, but way too long. That was the first change we made, was cut it back to 30 minutes. So I think in the 15 to 30 minutes, like we're solid for busy professionals. So that's awesome. Good.
Well, thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to have you on the inaugural season of my podcast, and you inspired me because I've had so much fun coming on to the Learning Geeks. If people want to find out more about you and your work and your current podcast, and I'm sure you'll have some new ones in the future, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, I'm Bob Gerard, Gerard, easy to find. If you Google me, you will probably find Bob Gerard, the race car driver from the 50s and 60s in the UK. So I don't tend to show up on Google very much, but find me on LinkedIn there. The Learning Geeks podcast, you can find wherever podcasts are sold. You can also go to learninggeekspod.com and get links to it on Spotify and Apple. Likewise, Short for a Stormtrooper. Just search for that on your podcast platform or go to sfaspod.com and likewise get links. So those are the best ways to get a hold of me. And please reach out. Would love to make new friends and talk to more people whenever I can.
Thanks so much, Bob.
Thanks for having me. It was great to talk to you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Brain Aware podcast. To learn more about Brain Aware training and our brain-based approach to change, teams and all levels of employee development, visit brainawaretraining.com.